What if I told you a man spends 17 years in prison for a crime that his doppelganger committed?
We are back with a case of mistaken identity that forced a man to spend 17 years behind bars.
I believe it was a striking resemblance. It just blew me away. Couldn't let someone else's mistake make me waver in my faith and never make me shy away from what was real and what the truth was, and that was I was innocent, and I knew it.
In 1999, Richard Jones was convicted of aggravated robbery in Kansas City, Kansas. The conviction was based largely on eyewitness testimony. Jones consistently maintained his innocence, insisting that he had not committed the crime. In 2015, a fellow inmate in the Kansas prison system, Ricky Amos, who bore a striking resemblance to Jones, came forward and informed Jones that he believed they looked remarkably alike. This led Jones to investigate further. With the help of the Midwest Innocence Project and the University of Kansas School of Law, Jones pursued DNA testing on evidence from the crime scene. The results showed that the DNA did not match Richard Jones, but instead matched that of the other man, Rick. Witnesses testified in court, admitting that they were unable to discern any notable differences between the two individuals because of their uncanny resemblance.
Judge recognized that an injustice had been done. Everyone did. The victim did. The original prosecutor did. And came to testify that Richard Jones didn't commit this crime.
They say everybody has a twin, right? To see these two men, it's like looking in a mirror, except they never met, though they were both housed in the same prison.
In 2017, after spending 17 years in prison, Richard Jones was exonerated and released. The case highlighted the potential pitfalls of relying solely on eyewitness testimony and the significant impact that mistaken identity can have on wrongful convictions. This is Anthony Broadwater, who was wrongfully convicted of rape in 1982 and spent nearly 40 years in prison for a crime he never committed. In 1981, Alice Sebold, a well-known novelist and author of The Lovely Bones, was brutally attacked and raped while she was a student at Syracuse University. Sebold later identified Anthony Broadwater as her attacker, leading to his arrest and subsequent trial. Anthony Broadwater maintained his innocence throughout the trial, asserting that he was not involved in the crime. Despite his protestations, he was convicted of first-degree rape. However, over the years, doubts began to emerge about the accuracy of Sebold's identification. In 2002, Broadwater's conviction was overturned based on new DNA evidence, as the DNA evidence obtained from the crime scene did not match Anthony Broadwater's DNA. In 2021, after spending nearly 40 years behind bars, Anthony Broadwater's conviction was officially vacated, and he was released from prison. It was indeed an emotional moment for him to get his deserved freedom after 4 decades. During these years, he never gave up on his innocence.
He's so tenacious to fight it. You got to have the perseverance, and you got to always never give up.
He still sympathizes to Alice for whatever happened to her on that fateful day. The New York State has agreed to pay $5.5 million for his pain and suffering. This is Richard Rosario. He was convicted for the murder that he never committed and spends 20 years in prison. In 1996, in New York City, 17 years old George Collazo was shot dead. After 2 weeks, victims, friends, and other witnesses at the scene were asked to look to a lineup. The man they picked out was 20 years old Richard Rosario, who was in Florida at the time of the murder. Soon he was told by his family that he is a wanted man by NYPD.
As soon as my mother told me, and I spoke to my sister, I spoke to my wife, and I found this out, I just came back.
Just after a few hours, he was arrested and charged for the murder just based on eyewitnesses. He provided authorities of the bus ticket that he had taken from Florida that confirms that he was not in New York. Furthermore, he provided name of multiple people as an alibi who can confirm that he was in fact in Florida. By looking on these evidences, it is strange how the jury found him guilty of the murder.
Police and gave them names and addresses and phone numbers, including yours. Did anybody ever call you?
Not a single phone call. No one from NYPD called me just to confirm if what he was saying was true.
This shows that his alibi was never checked.
Did you shoot him?
No.
Why are you here?
I'm never gonna lose hope. They have to take me out of here in a box. I'll never lose hope, no matter how long I'm here.
In 2013, the Innocence Project began taking interest in Rosario's case. The new evidence prompted the Conviction Integrity Unit of the Bronx District Attorney's Office to reinvestigate the case. In 2016, the conviction was overturned, and Richard Rosario was released from prison after spending 20 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit.
We can see that the defendant did not receive effective assistance of counsel. We consent to the release of the defendant on his own recognizance.
The jury is still out on the DA's office with regards to this wrongful conviction, and I hope that she would do the right thing to exonerate me, because I've been in prison for 20 years for a crime I didn't commit. My family didn't deserve this, I didn't deserve this, nor the victim's family or the victim. And I hope this conviction is not just vacated, but exoneration is given to me.
He was awarded $5 million in damages against the city of New York for his wrongful conviction. This is Luis Vargas. He was sentenced to 55 years in prison for a crime he never committed. The case was also based solely on eyewitness without any physical evidence linking him to the crime. With the help of Innocence Project, Luis Vargas' DNA was tested, which led to his exoneration after 16 years in prison.
Is in fact innocent because the evidence will show that it undermines the prosecution's case.
He had only one simple wish from his mother whenever he was exonerated.
Please buy me a big hamburger and we eat it together.
In July 2017, California Governor Jerry Brown approved $886,760 in state compensation. This is Deborah Milke. She spent 22 years on death row for the murder of her own son.
My innocence did not matter in their pursuit of a conviction.
Deborah's 4-year-old son was found shot dead in the desert. Soon she was arrested and questioned by Detective Armando Saldate, who claimed that Milke confessed to the murder of her own son.
She then decided that it'd be best for Christopher Milke to die.
She was then convicted of the murder of her own son, despite of any recording and evidence of her confession statement. She was sentenced to death. Over 2 decades later, questions were raised about the confession of Milke, as there was no recording of it, which she still denies to this date.
I had absolutely nothing to do with the brutal murder of my son, Christopher, and I did not give a confession to Mr. Saldate.
Court found out that Mr. Saldate had a long history of lying under oath and violating the individual rights. As there was no physical evidence linking her to the crime, she was exonerated in 2013 after 25 years in prison.
Losing a child to murder is a devastating tragedy. Being falsely accused of a crime you didn't commit is also a devastating tragedy. Try to imagine that. What happened to me could happen to any one of you.
She is now a free woman. Her compensation is ongoing.